I am ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 10. So I hope you guys are ready to dive back into some more modern industrialization, and today is going to get kind of interesting. There's going to be some twists and turns along the way, but ultimately our goal today is to unlock stainless steel. And this may sound absolutely ridiculous to only have 2 episodes and literally be at stainless steel in modern industrialization. And to that I would say, yes, this is pretty ridiculous, but that's primarily going to be because of our ability to completely skip the process that is the aluminum manufacturing, which is a huge time sink from my experience last time I played around with this mod. So today we're going to be diving into not only bees, but we're also going to be getting stainless steel produced. And our first steps actually today are going to be getting silicon. And we already have a method of generating silicon, so why would we need to produce another method? And that's where today I'm going to show you kind of a cheesy method that you can use to generate tons of silicon for anything you need in the future in modern industrialization. Now keep in mind, these are all related to all the mods 10. So if you're playing modern in another mod pack, all of these recipes will most likely be different, and all of the integrations will definitely be different. And I will say, so far, it has been a very pleasant trip into MI in this All the Mods pack. So now, in between episodes, I went ahead and set up a few things. So I can now make electric alloy. So all I had to do was make some cupronickel or cupronickel, and I got some of that processed up, made it real quick inside of a mixer, just like that, and smelted it. So now I have the ability to make it. And so I am now producing this, and I also made a polarizer. So this is just taking the ingredients and it's just sending it into a drawer, and I have this for all the other components. So inside of, for example, this drawer, I have copper fine wire. And then in this one, I have just copper wire. And I like to do this where I have like the rods for everything, like the tin, and just have it passively produced. It's going to make our auto crafting so much faster when we go to make more machines in the future. So I did the same thing for like gold sheets. And I also went ahead and moved my little setup here that I was making the curved plates up here, because I think up here, I want to be more specialized things. For example, this, you see, I do have the battery alloy. I kind of want to keep like very special things up here that we're going to need large quantities of. And for example, tin wire, we're going to need large quantities of, and things like that. But yes, as you can see, I went ahead and got that done. And here is the magic sauce right here. This is aluminum. And thankfully, because of this ore miner that just mines up aluminum ore, we have more than enough aluminum. And so we don't have to go through the processing, allowing us to just straight up make aluminum components, much like you see here, in just a blink of an eye, right? It's kind of absurd. So I am using some of that lubricant, by the way, for the cutting machines. You just need to export some lubricant back there. And we're producing more than enough lubricant between these 2 setups we set up last episode. Okay, time to get back onto topic, right? We are going to be making silicon. Yeah, it's going to be kind of ridiculous. And just in case you're wondering, silicon is actually going to be used quite a bit. We need it to make electronic circuits. And as of right now, that requires us to have a circuit board, which requires aluminum. We've already got that done. We also need redstone alloy parts and electrum, which I also have alloying now. Very easy, just gold and silver. But this is where we are going to need them, in the transistor and diode department, and other things in the future, I'm pretty sure. And so each one of these are going to require a silicon plate. So we need to have a process method of generating a bunch of this. Now, there's a lot of ways we could do this, but there's kind of a method, since we're already generating a ton for like things like AE, that we can just simply use an unpacker to unpack blocks of silicon. This is straight, you're seeing it. Now, we really don't need this in ingot form, but what we do need is we need plates, and we also will need the dust. So I'm going to place down a macerator, and we're going to use a compressor to make sheets. And then directly on top, I'll just use the unpackers. And so we can automate this to have them dropping directly down. And I also want to just repeat this on the other side, so that way we're producing twice the speed. So this is beautiful. Allowing this to go in like this and then get processed up. Oh, this is just absolutely fantastic. I mean, look at this. It's being produced now. So that is now making the dust that we're going to need for batteries down the road. And then this one is going to craft up, and that is going to make the plates that we're going to need, or the silicon sheets. So now between our electrum processing, which you can see happening right here, and it turning down into the fine wire, and between that and also having our silicon done, we can now go ahead and start auto crafting the circuits. And this is going to unlock something like the centrifuge and many other things that we're going to need in the future, especially if we plan on making stainless steel by the end of today's episode, and also have it produced in large quantities. So our electronic circuit is very important. So we need to make the diodes. And for right now, I'm not going to be using the in-dropped versions, or I believe there's another one. These require more chemical processes. So it just requires us to simply make the base diode. I think this is going to be more than fine. We have plenty of resources coming in, and same goes for this. This would definitely save us and kind of double the output, but I think this is going to be more than fine. Okay, so without further ado, we'll just toss this in now. And I think I now have the ability to craft the electronic circuit. And this is pretty huge, right? So long as I have all of the ingredients, bam, this should craft up in no time at all. Perfect. And this for us unlocked the power of silicon. But now we need to put this to use. And this is where I would assume that most people would get completely lost in this mod. And this is honestly just the start of the getting lost portion of the modern industrialization experience. Because what we're going to be venturing into next is going to be branches upon branches of chemical trees. But I do want to show you some quick tips that are going to help this process out, and utilizing the features that are built into JEI to hopefully allow you to find your own path. And that is to use the bookmark. So eventually we need to make stainless steel dust. And so we need to take a look at everything that is required here in this mixer to make this stuff. This makes a lot of sense when you look at all of these individual components, but we don't know how to get chromium and we don't know how to get manganese. All of these other things are pretty straightforward. Now, if we were to look at chromium and we click on this, we notice there's a crafting operation. And if you hit this bookmark button, it then will show you over here. And if you hold shift, you will now be able to see this. And this is pretty important within JEI, allowing you to build out recipe trees within side of the mod. And it's going to help a whole lot. So now we go, okay, well, how do we make chromium tiny dust? Well, that's when we take a look and we need to find what looks like the best option in this case. Of course, bees would ultimately be the best option, but we're going to come back to that in a second. But the electrolyzer, this is the next best option. So what we can do is we can bookmark this and we now can see that that's the next step in the list. And so on and so forth, right? We can take a look at the chemical and we go, okay, this is the best way. And then we bookmark that and we end up building these trees. And if we take a look, there's a pretty large tree here to technically get chromium, but there doesn't have to be. Oddly enough, we can actually just skip this entire tree right here to get chromium, and we can just make chromium nuggets. And this is kind of something that I would 100% recommend, is just making the chemical centrifuge. Now, this typically would be kind of expensive at this point, but because of our aluminum skip, we are able to just simply blaze right on in to making a centrifuge. And we also have an unlimited lava cell, so feeding this thing lava to produce chromium nuggets is going to be nice. And yeah, we're going to need quite a few chromium because I eventually want to make the chromium B. This is actually going to be a huge component to us being able to make an abundant amount of stainless steel that's going to be reasonable. So the way I'm going to handle the outputs that we're going to be receiving in this operation is as simple as it can possibly get. We are going to be using a 2x2 drawer, and we're going to essentially build this up so that way we can just void any excess and just let it constantly run and convert lava into all 4 of those resources. And so, I mean, it should automatically fill itself. It's going to be pretty nice, right? We can just hold down shift and right click here, have it automatically output the items directly into the drawer. And just up top, we'll use an exporter to export that lava. And man, I cannot believe, like, I love that these can be just simply powered like this. Oh, that is so good. Now, the outputs we're not going to see directly until the outputs are filled in, and we could technically lock this, but like I said, the main thing is going to happen down here when it automatically sends those ingredients out. We just have to be ready for it, and we're going to want those ingots in there. So Void cards are going to be my friend. And also we're going to want to make sure the storage is nice and large so that way it can just fill up with these resources. And so the functional diamond upgrades are pretty good. Like I think diamond is probably the best option here. I would say netherite, but it's not that big of a deal. Just to future-proof it, I am going to go, though, put a void upgrade on here. That means each of these slots can hold like 295,000. Now, something else that this produces a lot of is sulfur. Now, we're already producing a ton of sulfur, but this would be a way that you could produce quite a bit of sulfur for other operations. And now, because this is slow, this is another one of those operations where I want to double up. And looky there, we already have our first bit of chromium. And so now that we have that, we can lock it and then add it to our storage drawer list. Now, something else we can do with these machines is time wand them. And this will jumpstart them and get them going significantly faster, quicker. And we do have the ability to overclock them as well down the road. But yeah, if you want to jumpstart the production rate, this is a pretty decent way of doing it. Now, you may be wondering, Chosen, this is a really slow way of producing chromium. But it's not, because we're going to be able to use the chromium we produce here to make a bee. And this is where things get a little powerful, right? So we can actually make ourselves a chromium bee. And to do this, we just need a centrifuge with a few rubies in it, which we're probably going to want rubies anyway, since it is a process we're going to need down the road. But yeah, it's just 6 of those spawn eggs to make one, and that's pretty straightforward. But the flour that it actually needs is a block of chromium. And this is, like I said, a great way to get that. So now while this is kicking off and we have that producing, we can actually start working on manganese, which is going to be another bee we're going to work towards, but this one's going to be a little bit more involved. I'm going to try my best to simplify this process as much as possible. So all of the machines that you see right here are essentially what is going to produce this manganese. So we start off with an electrolyzer that is going to split into 2 fluids, which are going to go into this fluid drawer here. And the fluid drawers and stuff are what's going to make this whole operation really, really nice. So that way we can integrate it into our applied energistics system, and then we can just export to the next machine without needing to use any pipes or any sort of chaos like that. So then it goes into a chemical reactor. All of these things are courtesy of our easy aluminum production, because otherwise these machines would actually take a little bit of time to produce. And then that's just going to produce 1 fluid. However, these are going to require different chemical components that we're going to have to worry about. For example, this is going to take that oxygen that we're going to be producing with our first electrolyzer and moving it on to the next place. And then we move on to a centrifuge, which is going to produce 2 different materials that we're going to have access to. One of them we are going to use, the other one we really just need to avoid. And so on and so forth. It goes into the chemical reactor. This will then take that item and produce the material that we need, which is ultimately going to be manganese sulfuric solution. It's a big word, and we're also going to need this to produce our manganese. And this is why making the manganese bee is going to be really nice too, because yeah, this is just a mess, honestly. Now, for the first exporter, we're essentially just going to need to send this water. That will then process up and should convert into 2 different fluids, which we should be able to auto eject down into this section down here. So we do have to rotate. By default, it's in the back. So clicking this button forces it to the bottom. Now, as of right now, it has not done anything, but it should electrolyze this. Ah, yeah, there it goes. It started to produce it. I believe it has to reach a certain fluid threshold, though, before it starts to really get started. But yeah, this is another thing we could accelerate to get this started. I think it will auto split into this drawer, and I really hope so when it auto exports. Let's use our time wand to get this going a little bit faster. Yes, and it does auto split, and we definitely want to make sure to lock this. And then we want to hit it here. Now, this is producing hydrogen and oxygen, so void upgrade for sure is going to be necessary. And then we're also going to want our cards to upgrade the capacity. And so now with this added to the network, we can now access that oxygen and use this exporter to also pull that out. This one, we're going to have to make sure this is on scheduling mode, and it is going to receive sulfur, oxygen, and water. And I think when all of them are in place, we want to make sure to lock. And I believe this locks the recipes in whenever we click them like this. And that means that nothing is going to change. This is going to stay the same. And now we're going to receive out that sulfuric acid. And then we want to make sure to fluid eject and to make sure that goes down to the bottom, just like so. Now this next step is honestly really easy. It's just going to be iron ore that needs to be sent into the centrifuge. And once it gets enough in here, I believe it takes a certain amount, right? It takes 6. And as soon as we have that, it's going to make iron dust and also manganese crushed dust. And so the manganese crushed dust is really what we're after. And then we can just lock and void to make sure that it's going to constantly produce that. And yeah, probably also make sure that this is the correct drawer. Oh man, I'm such a dork for that. I essentially placed down a compacting drawer, but to be fair, they look very, very similar. And then for my next magic trick, I am going to make sure this is set to export, and we're going to drag that sulfur and the manganese in here. And then whenever both of those go in, I want to make sure that these recipes are locked just like that. And we just kind of have to wait until enough goes in here. This operation does take quite a bit. I don't know if clicking these actually lock it. I do believe that this should just exist right here. And the only thing this should be producing is the manganese sulfuric solution, which is a fluid. So we're going to auto eject that directly into the drawer. And voila, we have 9 buckets. And that didn't take very long at all. Just took a little bit of time for the export bus to ramp up. And locking that drawer again, adding it to the network, moving on to the next step. And this is the final step in producing the manganese. And so we just drag the solution into the export bus now that it's connected to our system. That is going to fill in. That's all we need to worry about. And then it's going to export. Now, I am going to set the output to the bottom, and I'm going to have the items auto ejected. But the fluids, we're actually going to want to take the byproduct that gets produced, and we actually want to send that back to the sulfuric acid. So all I have to do this is add a pipe that gets routed right back into here and connect this into the back and make sure this is set to extract that fluid. And so that way it's just going to send that sulfuric acid back into the tank, the extra that this produces, which you can see is right here. And before you know it, we're producing manganese. Believe it or not. Now, thankfully, we only need 1 manganese dust, which we already have the ability to craft because this is the tiny version, by the way. So we just craft this up, and this is all that's needed to get the manganese bee up and running. Now, to make these bees, we are going to need to use a centrifuge, and so we're going to need to craft up some iron bee spawn eggs, and then I'm also, for the chromium bee, going to need rue bee spawn eggs. And the rue bees are pretty easy for us to make as well. They're just diamond bees, where we have clicked the rubies onto them. And you may be wondering, how do you get rubies? Well, this ore right here typically looks like it can be found here. I'm assuming it can be found in world as well, but this farm that I set up, the giant cube, is producing it. So I know it's been a while, but back at our bee area, this setup is still going to work the same way. I have iron bees that are in here, and we need to get ourselves some iron bee gene samples. So this one right here has 36%. And this is actually something that I just recently found out, that you can actually take this and you can combine this productive iron that's still at 36%. And you can put this treat inside of here with an egg. And we should be able to technically still get a chance at getting that bee. Just notice it's a chance, right? But it still will consume. It'll just take a few operations before it happens. This trick right here is going to save you so much time. And I'm so glad I found out about it now instead of later, because yeah, it's going to save me a lot of time. So now I got all of my iron bee spawn eggs. So I'm very, very close as of right now. I've just got to convert the rubies, and then we've got to get the basically the ruby spawn egg, and then we'll have both bees, the chromium bee and the manganese bee. Goodness, I'm having a hard time pronouncing that. Now that I have the bees, apparently we just put them in here, and this is supposed to convert into a spawn bee. It took them. Oh, it just takes a little bit of time. Okay, so we can accelerate that quite a bit. Perfect. Nice. I love how it doesn't really tell us, it just says configurable bee, but it will change to the manganese bee. Perfect. And now the ruby, toss that in, and just like the other one, oh, this is good. We'll have a chromium bee. This is important. Like this is really, really powerful, these 2 bees. Now to spawn them in and catch them, just like that, and then get them into a beehive. Now in these beehives, by the way, I am going to use, for example, a manganese on this side. I'm also going to put a ruby inside of here as well. And then same on this side, we will have the chromium bee, and I'll also put another ruby over here as well. So now to grab a few of these, we just need enough for the blocks. So there is one dust that is for one of our bees. And then over here, I will grab out all of the chromium that we have. And I think this is going to be enough to make at least one block. So I hope. So we'll throw all of that together. That's chromium. Yeah, we have 18. And perfect. We now have a block and everything needed for both of those. And this, my friends, is going to make this very powerful. So we'll put in the ruby block and the manganese and the chromium block here. Oh boy, these are going to start ramping up. Let's just go ahead and accelerate this here just to make sure things are working. Oh, and they are. And this is going to be producing quite a bit. And we want to make sure that we're pulling all of this chromium dust out of here and storing this into our main storage. Wouldn't you know it, I have the perfect place for it right here. Beautiful. So now is time for the moment of truth, setting up our electronic best friend, aka the electronic blast furnace, aka the EBF. So we are going to need to set up a EBF, and we haven't set one up just yet because we essentially skipped the whole aluminum processing, which would have required an EBF setup for that. Now we have used the steam version of the EBF, but as of right now, we're going to be working with this. Now we do need an input hatch for power in the back, and we should be able to slap a gate on here, and then we can use like steam item input and output hatches because we're going to need to send in the stainless steel in the dust form, and then we should get a hot stainless steel ingot out. And that hot stainless steel is kind of important, right? Now, all of the other components for this are going to be casings. So let's see, casing, like here, the heat-proof casings. And so all of these other slots, that's exactly what this is going to be. Now, this middle section right here is going to be made of cupronickel, which is an alloy that we make that is very, very straightforward to put together. And we've already had that produced. So this is going to be the start of the EBF, but there is another tier that we haven't got to yet. But yes, for right now, this is going to be how everything goes, and we'll cover the top off just like this. And it should be complete. Yes, it says shape is valid and the status is now active. And then I would assume if it's like any other machine, we can just slap a gate onto the back to give it power. Oh, this is so nice. Now, inside of our electronic mixer, we probably want to lock a recipe in here first, and we can actually do that quite easily with JEI. Because otherwise it's going to start producing a bunch of invar dust, something we got to kind of keep in mind when doing this. As you can tell, I've already made my own mistakes when working on this. But this is the recipe. We can click this button in here, and that actually kind of locks the crafting recipe. And all we have to do now is just simply send in the ingredients, making sure this is on scheduled mode, just like this. And that is going to make sure that the stainless is the product that we're going to receive every time. Now, if you do happen to pull it in from JEI, you may have to change some of the sort of locked ingredients here. For example, this one right here. Let's go ahead and put it in edit mode. I need to change it and place in this particular nickel dust, and then we're producing stainless steel, as you can see, and then auto output the items down into the drawer below. Now, this stainless steel dust is also used to produce Kanthal dust, which is something that we need to use to upgrade our EBF in the future. But for right now, we can actually just go ahead and start producing stainless steel. So we can take this and send it immediately into the EBF, just like so, into the input hatch. Making sure this is set to false and blacklist. There we go. And yes, this should send that in just like you see there. It's receiving power, and this will now kick on and start working. Exactly what we want to see. And so now this produces a stainless steel hot ingot, and this gets us into the next multi-block, which is a vacuum freezer, which is another high tier machine that is kind of expensive to set up, but is honestly going to be super worth it, as we are going to need stainless steel sheets, which are going to all need to be processed for future endeavors. So definitely worth getting. And so the vacuum freezer I do have on request, and we can go ahead and make this thing. It is a lot of moving components. Let's replan, start. There we go. And this is going to start doing a lot of crafting, but very, very fast, right? I think eventually I will be moving away from having everything done with a hammer, but yeah, for right now, there we go. Now this multi-block is going to require frost-proof machine casings, and these require a bunch of aluminum, but as you can see, we have all of this aluminum on check, ready to go, and we're gonna need about 30 of them for this multi-block. Technically, We wouldn't need all 30 if we used hatches for everything. But yes, we do have the ability to make all of this aluminum, so I might as well just do all 30 casings. I think that is going to be more than easy to do, as it's made practically instantly. So I'm going to leave a 1 block gap here and then place a case. And then whenever I place this, you can now see how big this multi-block is going to be. And just like our other setup, we're going to need an energy on the back, an energy input. I'm going to put a item input on the side here, and then a item output on the other side. I think I got these backwards. There we go. Item input and an item output. So we can send the item from here to here. And then all of the other stuff is just simply placing in the casing, leaving the center hollow. Honestly, this is the easiest MI experience I've ever done. And I think I've only played around with MI like 3 times or so, but still, like, this has been the best experience thus far. And I think it's primarily because I haven't had to worry about power management. And the power management part of this is very, very painful. And it does become very, very stressful over time. But here we go. We'll put the item hatch in, and we're just sending this directly over, making this super easy. I think, can I use this wrench, by the way? Okay, so that wrench will just completely break it off. Ah, that's right. I have my wrench in my offhand. I was like, where is my wrench? But there we go. Perfect. I will have that push, making sure to turn that off. And you can use any item pipe, by the way. But there we go. That has gone in there, and we can now see that this is going to start to ramp up. And I believe that once the efficiency gets up to 64, it will go faster, and faster and faster and faster. But yeah, as soon as this reaches its first product, which I think it's already done, we now have stainless steel ingots. Invar with slot locking. Very, very nice. Now, to kind of keep everything in check, I do want the stainless to be sent directly over here. These EBFs and the freezer is only ever going to be used for this anyways. That's kind of the way I'm setting all of this up. So just something to kind of note. This right here is going to be only used for just constantly producing stainless steel at this point. And so it is at this point that I can officially say I have not gone farther than in modern industrialization. So everything moving forward from this point on is going to be completely new to me. So yeah, that's going to be an experience, but I'm going to try my best to get through all of it. And we've still got to go quite deep into this pack. I mean mod. Yeah. I mean, it could be its own pack essentially. So perfect. Now between episodes, I am going to work a little bit more on some other productivity things that are essentially repeating the same steps. We're going to have some steps that end up getting repeat here, but instead of using a steam blast furnace, I will use an EBF. And yeah, I will be making a lot more of the EBFs and also the vacuum freezer, as to be able to make can thaw, we have to essentially repeat these steps up here and do it a little bit differently, but still we're going to use this, and over here will be the exact same setup, essentially producing the can thaw, which we're going to have to need to be able to make these can thaw wires and so on and so forth, right? Can thaw is of course like almost identical to this whole thing, using chromium, aluminum dust, and stainless steel. Like the exact same process, right? And that's going to be a common theme, right? We're going to be doing a lot of similar things. So there's going to be a lot more in the future that is going to be kind of behind the scenes essentially. But if you follow me over on Discord, I do live stream whenever I do my recordings, and everything that I am doing is technically being live streamed there on the Discord. And I hang out with you guys all the time. I come unmuted whenever I'm not recording, all that fun stuff. So definitely be sure to check that out. And guys, that's going to be it for today's episode. I know, like kind of ridiculous. The bees, everything is just making this so simple to get through. And I don't know how many episodes it's going to take for us to finish MI, but I hope you guys are enjoying this process and learning along with me, as that's my ultimate goal, is to show you some strategies that I've learned and kind of share them with you so you can apply them in your own playthrough. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already. Give this video a huge thumbs up. And of course, it's now time to thank the amazing supporter that makes this all possible, the supporter of today's episode. And that huge thanks is going to go out to Shark over on the Discord. Thank you so much for becoming a Discord premium member and supporting me in one of the best ways possible. And of course, with that, guys, I look forward to seeing you in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching.